So, GameFreak is in timeout or something? I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but also not really. I guess I may as well mention what the news flash is. So, GameFreak is moving its office space to the same building as Nintendo. This was something that was a rumor of sorts before quarantine started, but now that quarantine's over, it's become official. A lot of people might be thinking, well, why does this matter? And a lot of other people might be thinking, yeah, this is a big deal. And I'm one of those people. I think this is a big deal. As we all know, GameFreak has been under fire lately, especially since Sword and Shield became a thing. And to make things clear, yes, those are really fun games, but the general consensus, including from myself, is that those games needed some extra hands to work on it because it just seemed really unfinished and unpolished, and the animations and graphics and a lot of other things were just really awful. We did see a slight step up though. The DLC has made the future look a lot more promising for Pokemon, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I've made 2 videos on the 2 sides of this coin. One of them is my Pokemon review/rant video, and then the other one is my video on the Isle of Armor and what I thought about the direction they were going with it. Feel free to check those videos out. I'll just leave a link in the description. The review rant, I think, is worth your time at the very least. But so as to not change the topic too much, let's get back to the whole GameFreak moving into the same building as Nintendo and what that actually means for the future of GameFreak and Pokemon. When it comes to the relationship between the two, GameFreak and Nintendo, GameFreak is essentially a second-party developer for Nintendo in collaboration with Creatures Inc., and together the 3 make the Pokemon Company. The Pokemon Company's biggest focus and profit comes from the sale of merchandise like toys and trinkets. That's not to say that the video games don't make a lot of money, because they do. Sword and Shield broke $1 billion in gross profits, and that's before taking into account the DLC. But something's definitely been happening behind the scenes, and it's becoming more and more obvious lately. I have a few points to go over that will back up a certain theory that I have right now. And that theory is that Nintendo is keeping a very close, watchful eye on GameFreak right now and the production of whatever the next Pokemon game is going to be. Point number 1 I have that backs this up. I live in New York City, and Nintendo New York is a big deal here. They always showcase their new games on a big screen in the main area. They didn't do that with Sword and Shield. They have never not done this with any game ever, as far as I know. Sword and Shield is the first. Even Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee was shown on the big screen here and showcased for everyone. But Sword and Shield, they only kept it in the game case and never put it on any of the display screens for anyone to play. Why? Probably because Nintendo knows that the game is a buggy mess and really hard to look at visually. Anyone who saw this before purchase might decide not to get the game in the end. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is the Pokemon anime. Normally the way things go, Ash goes to a new region every year or 2 years, something like that, and the point is that the games have to keep up with the anime and vice versa. Basically everything is put on a schedule between the anime, the toys and merchandise that are put out, and the video games. And up until now, this has been something that they have done every year. You have a new release every year, and that has had a severely negative impact on the video games and GameFreak as a whole. It's been becoming more and more apparent that games have been getting more and more rushed, especially since X and Y. GameFreak seems to have made some attempts to try to remedy this, but by doing some pretty scummy things, like releasing Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which were hardly enhancements of the original version's Sun and Moon. Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee were also pretty damn bare bones, and I think they were made as a distraction to try to give themselves more time to make Pokemon Sword and Shield. From what we're told, and I don't know whether to believe this or not, but I'll try and give them the benefit of the doubt even though they've lied about things in the past, but GameFreak has said that it's been a 3-year development cycle for Pokemon Sword and Shield. That's a very average development cycle though for what came out to be a pretty technically unsound game, so that doesn't make much sense either. The obvious solution here would be to hire more people, but GameFreak refuses to do so because they believe it's easier to communicate things with their team of 140 members. You heard that right. the biggest franchise in the world, only has 140 people working on each new game that's supposed to come out yearly. Compare that to Assassin's Creed, which has over 1,000 people working on each release, but also releases on pretty much the same schedule. You got yourself a problem. But even putting this entire fact aside of Game Freak not having enough people working on its games, Nintendo seems pretty keen on doing something about this, or at least the Pokemon company as a whole does. The anime is seeing Ash do a world tour, meaning it looks like they're trying to distract from Galar for a while on the anime and make room for some more things to be done behind the scenes for the games? Like, it seems like they're trying to make at least one extra year for Game Freak to have a little more time to develop the next games. At least that's my theory, and I only think this because it goes along with the other examples that I have. No one's complaining about the world tour. Matter of fact, it's actually going over very well with fans, and if that's the case, I think this might become the new norm, and Pokemon might go to bi-yearly releases instead of yearly releases, much like Assassin's Creed has done in recent years. So Ash, go ahead and stay on that world tour for as long as you like. The next games need more time to be developed. Which brings me to my final case for why I think things are being done behind the scenes to allow for a better game to be made next time by Game Freak. And that is the main news topic that I brought up earlier, that Game Freak is moving its offices into the same building as Nintendo. What this allows for is not only can Nintendo keep a watchful eye on Game Freak and make sure that they're actually working, but this gives Game Freak a direct and very easy access support line to the rest of Nintendo for help developing on the Nintendo Switch console. Because as we've seen, it's definitely something they're struggling with. I see this news as a very good, promising prospect for the future of Pokemon and Game Freak's development cycle. Maybe now they'll have direct access to Monolith Soft, which can teach them how to do open world properly, like they did with Breath of the Wild. There is nothing but positives to come out of this new relocation for Game Freak's headquarters. They can now convene with Nintendo and the other development studios in the building faster and more efficiently than ever, meaning we can expect a way more polished, fully realized game next time. So to summarize for you how these 3 points mash up. Upon release, Nintendo was aware that Sword and Shield was unpolished and unfinished, therefore they did not let it out on display for anyone to play before buying it. Nintendo must have then convened with the rest of the Pokemon Company, and together the 3 companies that comprise the Pokemon Company decided to make Ash go on a world tour in the anime, and for Game Freak to move its offices over to the same building as Nintendo so that they can have a better support line to better develop for the Nintendo Switch system, because they seem to have been struggling up until now. So there you have it, but what do you think about all these events that have been unfolding with the Pokemon Company, mainly Game Freak and Nintendo? Do you think this is as good a sign as I think it is? Cause I'd really like to know what your thoughts are and see different opinions on this. Before I go though, I want to thank my patrons for supporting me, especially during this whole lockdown situation going on. I'm in New York City and yes, we're still in lockdown and it's still really depressing. But hey, at least I was able to make this video. So if you liked it, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you also want to become one of my patrons, there will be a link at the end of the video as well as in the description. Until then, I'll see you guys next time.